Welcome to Postcards, a brief look at people, places, the arts and curiosities from around the world. On today's program, the face of a 4th century aristocratic Roman developed using forensic techniques. The work of 6 pioneering Russian women artists, Amazons of the avant-garde. Our feature looks at a British organisation working to save the sight of West Africans. The biggest launch of museums the world has ever seen, Britain's Millennium Museum project, and a multi-million-dollar restoration to an 18th century mansion on the banks of the Thames. But first up, it was here in the dreaded Tower of London that Sir Thomas More spent his final days. Imprisoned by the then King Henry VIII on a charge of high treason, he remained in this small stone cell in the lower part of the bell tower until his execution in 1535. Decades later, Sir Thomas More, once the King's right-hand man and political advisor, will be made a saint and become one of England's most famous religious martyrs. Sir Thomas More had sealed his fate when he fell out with Henry over the King's divorce. Sticking to his Roman Catholic beliefs, More challenged the monarch's decision to change the law, divorce his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, and marry his mistress. Sir Thomas More believed the King's actions were denying the authority of the Pope. These 5 masterpieces associated with Sir Thomas's life and legacy are displayed for the first time, loaned to the British Museum by the Jesuit order. Groups of Tudor jewellery associated with one person are rare, often not surviving, because it was considered dangerous to hold and keep them. From the time of More's execution in the 16th century, the government was concerned that jewellery or relics associated with someone shouldn't become objects of devotion. The collection, described as exceptional by museum curators, includes More's personal silver seal, a garnered cameo of the Virgin Mary, and gold reliquary crosses, one with the words, "This is a relic of Thomas the Apostle," inscribed in Greek. This pendant is probably the most precious item of all. It was made to commemorate More within his family circle around 1550, approximately 15 years after he was executed. By this time, More was already being considered as a saint, although he was not actually canonised until 1935. More's family has been credited with preserving the jewellery. It's been passed down through the generations. The jewels, commemorating an extraordinary legacy of Roman Catholic belief in Britain, will now be displayed alongside other relics from the same era, items like this signet ring that belonged to Mary, Queen of Scots. The cosmopolitan face of London from AD 350. This is the first ever likeness of a Roman Londoner. Little is known about her, except that she was not British-born, but came from southwest Europe. Her well-preserved skeleton was discovered in March last year in a lead coffin in an area that was once a roadside cemetery outside the walls of Roman London. The portrait of the aristocratic Roman was developed using forensic techniques. DNA analysis and carbon isotype analysis done on her teeth gave 2 readings. The DNA analysis suggests that she possibly comes from the Basque area of Spain, and the isotope analysis indicates she was brought up in a warm climate, the Western Mediterranean. On that basis, she's been given brown eyes and dark hair. The likeness is thought to be precise enough for her own family to recognise her. The woman in her early 20s shows signs of considerable wealth. The lead coffin was inside a stone sarcophagus with a small box, a jet hairpin and glass bottles. Her funeral clothes were Chinese silk, and it's thought her head rested on a pillow of bay leaves, the first time bay leaves have been found anywhere in the Roman Empire. Bone analysis shows she was well nourished. She could have arrived in Britain as the wife or daughter of a senior military or administrative figure. It's thought she died from an infection. There are no signs of an accident or disease, or of having had children, so death in childbirth has been ruled out. Although beauty is in the eye of the beholder, her bone structure suggests she had a good diet and was well nourished. The things she was buried with indicate she came from a wealthy family. More than likely, it's thought she would have been quite an imposing member of Roman London society. Today, she's the face of the past, revealed through modern science. At the Piano by Nadezhda, just one of the works featured in Amazons of the Avant-Garde. The Royal Academy of Arts exhibition highlights the work of 6 pioneering Russian women artists who, at the dawn of the 20th century, had a crucial impact on the political, ideological and social thought of a country about to embrace revolution. A number of the works were made before the Russian Revolution in 1917, but they have a revolutionary spirit, a result of the sense of possible change in Russia at that time. These artists, though not overtly traditional, were interested in the concept of renewing society and creating a type of art that would be for the masses and not an elite group. A self-portrait by Voveva Stepanova, the youngest artist of the 6. She was particularly keen that art adjust to a new industrial order. Lyubov Popova produced some of the most important Cubist works of the Russian avant-garde. The influence of the Cubists is clear in this painting, Composition with Figures. The vivid self-portrait with yellow lilies by Natalia Goncharova, influenced by the post-impressionists. Composition by Nadezhda Udaltsova, a fellow student of Popova at the Académie de la Palette in Paris, and also a follower of Cubism. This is Venice by Alexander Exter. The artist travelled regularly between the Ukraine, Russia, France and Italy, serving as an important emissary between the Russian avant-garde and artists in Western Europe. And Portrait of a Lady in Pink by Olga Rozanova. The artist wanted to discover new bases of artistic creation, an aspiration shared by all the women. The exhibition includes many works being shown in the West for the first time. It's mid-morning in the West African state of Gambia, but for 50-year-old Mamadou Sow, it may as well be night. Mamadou is one of the world's 50 million blind people. He's also one of the 70% whose blindness could be cured or prevented in the first place. Mamadou says he was a weaver before he developed cataracts and went blind. Now, like so many fellow sufferers, he can't work or take care of himself and is dependent on others. For the last 5 years, the Bass Eye Unit in eastern Gambia has offered Mamadou and thousands of others hope. Announcements on local radio bring them to regular eye camps run by the British charity Sight Savers International. Travelling eye surgeons carry out cataract operations here. Over a period of 3 days, Mamadou and hundreds of others will put themselves in the hands of sight savers. Cataract is the most common cause of blindness worldwide, and 90% of sufferers live in the developing world. Sight Savers is trying to reach them, offering a cheap, simple operation that can restore their sight. From its base in Sussex in southern England, the charity has for the last 50 years played a leading role in tackling blindness worldwide through eye camps and mobile units. 50 years ago, blindness was widespread amongst the people of Western Africa, a phenomenon the developed world knew little about. Their plight was brought to world attention by a blind Englishman and his wife, who spent several years living in a Ghanaian village whose entire populations were blind and knew nothing else. Sir John Wilson's wife, Jean, who was sighted, was quite a novelty to the villagers. Living in an isolated community, they literally thought the rest of the world was blind. Although they didn't realise it at the time, the Wilsons were to discover these circumstances could be found across 7 countries. A major cause of such widespread disability was onchocerciasis, or river blindness, a disease whose legacy is visible today. It was Sir John's research 25 years ago that led to river blindness being brought under control. He discovered that the disease was caught near the fertile land bordering Africa's rivers, also the breeding ground for a small black fly called the Simoleum. The tiny insects bite like mosquitoes, and when they do, they release into the skin of the victim a parasite, which eventually destroys the optic nerve. With the aid of the government, the first thing was to destroy the flies via a system of delivering insecticide into the rivers. For 20 years, the society worked solely with the local government. Later, the World Bank became involved and international funds were injected into their projects. Today, 80 million people are still at risk from river blindness, but thanks to the work pioneered and carried out by sightsavers, the disease can now be prevented. An annual dose of a new drug called Mectizan kills the parasites. If taken over a period of 10 years, it breaks the transmission cycle of the disease.
The war is being fought against blinding malnutrition. Xerophthalmia, a blindness striking at 200,000 babies each year throughout the world, 42,000 each year in India alone, and caused not by where or how they live, but by what they eat.
Over the decades, Sightsavers has targeted all preventable blindness. It discovered that thousands of children in the developing world go blind through a combination of malnutrition, measles and diarrhoea, suffering that could be prevented through a diet rich in vitamin A. And as well as providing education and training for the incurably blind, the charity supplied entire districts with eye tests, diagnosis and treatment. Throughout, the goal has been to empower local people to take control, thereby increasing the economic value of their land. To convince a sceptical world that its radical approach was right, Sightsavers organised an assault on Africa's highest peak, Mount Kilimanjaro, in 1969. The climbers were 5 blind African men. Their successful challenge did more than anything else to show governments and the world what blind people could achieve. "30 years later, another group of blind and visually impaired youngsters followed in their footsteps. This time, the challenge was to raise money for another special cause. Over a period of 2 years, Sightsavers aims to treat 400,000 people like these at Vivekananda Eye Hospital in West Bengal, who are queuing to register for sight-restoring cataract operations. It's part of Sightsavers' way of marking its own 50th anniversary and of contributing to a powerful campaign called Vision 2020, mounted by the World Health Organization and non-governmental organisations, which aims to eliminate curable blindness over the next 2 decades. The operation is a safe, relatively simple one, a procedure which takes 2 minutes and costs as little as $24 US. Cataract occurs when the lens of the eye becomes cloudy, preventing the passage of light and leading to total blindness. The surgeon takes out the clouded lens and replaces it with a plastic one, permanently restoring sight. Over the past 50 years, such operations and other pioneering work has enabled Sightsavers to restore sight to 4 million people and treated 45 million others. Sir John Wilson, the man who galvanised the world to tackle blindness, died late last year. For him, such a remarkable achievement still wasn't enough. Knowing that there are 450 million disabled people in the world and that at least half that disability is preventable, the Society's work has extended into deafness, orthopaedics and psychiatric handicaps. For Mamadou, though, just this moment is enough. His vision is restored and will improve over the coming weeks as his eye begins to heal.
Look at me. What you got?
After returning home the same day, determined to return to his weaving as soon as possible, he walked around the village unaided, delighting in his ability to see again. For Mamadou and millions like him, Sightsavers has provided a new lease of life and the priceless gift of sight. Britain is gearing up for its greatest museum and gallery expansion in history. 2,000 more new museums and art galleries, some new, some refurbished, will open all over the UK this summer and spring. It's been dubbed the biggest launch of museums the world has ever seen. Altogether, $720 million has been invested in Britain's Millennium Museum project. Many of Britain's well-loved institutions were created in the 19th century. The newly injected funds will bring them up to date, modernise them to serve the public better and attract more visitors to the country. The Millennium Museum openings were this week launched in Britain's National Portrait Gallery in London. It's currently undergoing nearly $25.6 million worth of extension work. The government hopes more up-to-date museums will encourage more people through the doors, to encourage that part of the population who haven't previously had the opportunity to visit a theatre, concert hall or art gallery. At the centre of this year's openings will be the new $51.2 million Tate Modern beside the Thames. Considered by both the government and art world as one of Britain's most important buildings for visual arts in the past 100 years, it will house art of the 20th and 21st century. The project will also see the opening of a new $33.6 million new art gallery in Walsall in the Midlands. 4 new galleries at a cost of around $16 million will also open to celebrate the centenary of the Wallace collection in central London. By June, the Imperial War Museum will have created a major new gallery dedicated to the Holocaust. While the Science Museum in London will open a new wing, making it one of the world's leading centres for the presentation of contemporary science and technology. A new Millennium Bridge, due to be finished in June, is also planned for the River Thames. It will link St Paul's Cathedral with the Tate Gallery and will be the first bridge to be built across the river in 100 years. Somerset House on the north bank of the Thames. This is one of Britain's greatest historic landmarks and best-kept secrets. An 18th century masterpiece built on the site of a 16th century palace to house government offices. It's now set to open to the public for the first time in more than 200 years. Structural work is underway as part of a $76.8 million US restoration. New galleries will house exhibitions from the collection of the Hermitage Museum in St Petersburg, the Gilbert Collection of Decorative Arts, and in due course, the Impressionist paintings of the Courtauld collection. There will also be a restaurant and a summer cafe on the restored River Terrace. The building's courtyard, until recently the Inland Revenue car park, now it's said to be a grand public space for day and evening use. The old tarmac is being replaced with granite paving to mirror the original 18th century appearance. A series of fountain jets lit up at night will create a forest of water in the middle. New lighting and a service area underground will mean space for more than 3,700 people to attend performances. With a new glass and stone bridge planned to link the terrace with Waterloo Bridge and free entry to the museums and galleries, Somerset House is poised to be a major new focal point in central London. The first course of a 16th century merchant's feast, capturing the flavour of the Museum of London's exhibition 500 Years of Eating Out in London. Over the centuries, people have always eaten out because they had no choice. A lot of homes had access to a hearth, so their cooking was largely pot-based. If they wanted something roasted or baked, they simply had to go out to get it. The exhibition looks at all aspects of dining out, ranging from the very cheap cookhouse to street vendors selling cockles and codlings. Soup kitchens sprang up in the mid-19th century to cater for the nation's poor and the capital's working classes with nourishment. This one, the Northwest Public Soup Kitchen, was situated at Euston, near the site today of Euston Railway Station. The exhibition provides an insight into how eating habits and cooking methods have changed, especially with the advent of electricity. It also reveals how what people ate was dictated by those in positions of authority. During the London Blitz of World War II, many people were bombed out, left without the means to cook a hot meal. During this period, various eating houses sprang up. Obviously, though, restaurants were affected by the war, with many of the items on the menu subject to rationing. London's first coffee house opened in 1652, serving light refreshments. In the late 17th century, a cup of coffee, with or without sugar, cost a penny, and even included a pipe of tobacco. Fine dining has existed in the capital since the 18th century. Today, Londoners spend around £700, or $1,100 US each year eating out, and have an appetite-whetting range of restaurants and fast food outlets from which to choose. It was the classic car sale, a chance for prospective buyers to look back over four-wheeled favourites of the 20th century. Pioneering favourites like this 1921 Ford Model T, a car that set new standards in automobile reliability. Other vehicles on parade? How about this 1935 Bedford 12-seater country bus, once a familiar sight along English country roads and still in good working order. Dating from the same year, this Rolls-Royce limousine. Thanks to major restoration and refurbishment work over the past 5 years, it eventually sold for $33,600 US. Its 1926 sister, the Rolls-Royce 20 HP Tourer. Often referred to as the Baby Rolls, it went for a modest $22,400. According to the sale organisers, though, a car doesn't have to cost the earth to qualify as a classic. Cars can be purchased for as little as $800. And it's all a matter of taste. This 1967 Jaguar E-Type fixed-head coupe failed to make its reserve price of $19,200. While this Shelby Mustang 350 GT from the same decade sold for nearly $29,000. This Ferrari Dino 246 GT said bag one 70s devotee $68,800. One of the countless stars of the show was a 1977 limited edition Volkswagen 1200 Beetle, one of the most successful cars of all time, sadly though, unsuccessful here. And the perfect Christmas present for someone, this half-scale working model based on the Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost went for $10,400 US.
Lot number 5. This is very interesting, isn't it? The Morris 8 Series 2 4-door saloon, 1930.
At the auction itself, one of the first cars to be sold was a 1938 Morris 8, one of the most popular of Britain's pre-war family saloons.
3,700. Once, twice, and gone.
For one lucky driver, a chance to motor into the 21st century with a motoring legend from the 20th. And that's all for today. Join us again next time for a postcard look at interesting people, places, and the arts.